In the summer of 1944, the population of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp continued to increase. The number of prisoners had grown to almost 130,000 men and women. Those who managed to get some job in the camp or be assigned to a better labor commando avoided starving to death. They worked in hospitals, kitchens and warehouses as clerks or messengers. Among them, even love could blossom. The tale of Marla Zimetbaum and Edek Galinsky is one such story.
I met Marla in the winter of 1942-43. I know that she arrived with a Jewish transport from Belgium in September 1942 and was selected to enter the camp. Young, healthy women entered the camp, and old women went to the gas. Marla was a Belgian Jew. She spoke German and French very well. Her Polish was not as good, and she spoke it with a Jewish accent. I also spoke French well, and this entertained us. We spoke French to each other. This language distracted us from the surrounding nightmare. In this way, we became closer. Basically, Marla worked as a camp messenger. There were several of these messengers, always standing by the guardhouse, at the gate. They froze in the winter. At the command, "Messenger!" always shouted by the supervisors Drexler or Mandel, the messengers had to run and do what they were told. But Marla, in addition, had one more job. She took the prisoners from the hospital, who managed to survive the sick room, and escorted them to the barracks. It largely depended on her where someone was taken. She tried to see that weak people got into a work squad where the work was a little easier, and where they had a chance to survive. In the spring of 1943, I lay seriously ill in hospital barrack number 23. I had typhus and didn't know anything about my child that was outside the camp. I was psychologically broken. And then Marla came to see me. She brought me a photograph of my daughter. This was forbidden. We got letters, but not photographs. I was extremely terrified of the camp, sick and broken, because I found out that my husband had been shot. I couldn't take it anymore. I certainly wouldn't have survived the camp if not for this. Simply put, I recovered and I asked, begged her to give me the photograph. She said she would try to do something. She replaced it in the documents with some other photograph and brought me the photo of my daughter. Marla had a job, but she was also always gentle, subtle, delicate. Almost all the female prisoner functionaries screamed and yelled. They never spoke normally to us. It was a vulgar scream combined with a beating, but Marla behaved like a lady. She always spoke politely, never raising her voice. She differed a lot from the other functionaries who had some influence in the camp. Marla told me several times to take care about the way I look. Try and take care of yourself. You have to find some way to wash. There was no water or lights yet in Brzezinka. There was mud, lice, typhus and corpses. I complained that I was at the end of my rope, that it's so hard because I just recovered from typhus, that I'm so weak. And she says, "Do you know how I survived typhus? I couldn't lay down at all, because they would have taken me straight to the gas." We stood for hours at roll calls, and I know her precisely from those roll calls, when she delivered a message to the barrack supervisor or called out someone's number. We knew then that it was possible to dress well in civilian clothes in the camp, to be pretty and have access to places we couldn't go. However, Marla did not provoke envy. just the opposite. She gave hope that this could be done, that all is not lost. Mala's pretty face. There was life in it, and she always had some important news for us, that the Germans were losing, that they were defeated somewhere, and this raised our spirits. Therefore everyone idolized her, the beauty in her. Mala was the exception. I'm not at all surprised that Edek fell in love with her.
Edek was unusually handsome, very manly, courageous, and a risk-taker. He became a man in the camp. We came to Oswiecim in the first transport. Edek got number 531, and I got 290. I met often with Galiński. During one of our conversations, we decided to organize an escape. We came to the conclusion that both of us had to get jobs in work squads that moved freely outside the camp. I had to change work squads, which I managed to do with great difficulty at the end of 1943. Galiński managed to transfer from the main camp to Bukojemski, where he worked in a squad of fitters.
We met on a camp street, and I asked her, "Mala, what's new?" I already knew about Edek, that they were in love, but I wanted to hear it from her. Mala, so radiant, just glowing then, says, "It's love. I'm in love." In Polish, she said, "I'm in love and I am loved."
It seemed impossible in the camp, among those reeking crematoria. Some thought it was kind of in poor taste. But life is life. They wanted each other.
Mala met with Edek mainly in the hospital, in Barrack 30. This barrack was the most distant from the camp street, the least visible from the watchtower. Moreover, since June 1943, when Rotter became the camp doctor, this barrack was off-limits to all non-medical SS men due to the infectious diseases. Michał Kula, the maintenance man, had the keys to the X-ray room, and thanks to him, Mala and Edek could meet. I met Mala again when she wanted to have a portrait done and give it to her lover. She acquired coloured pencils from somewhere, and I sketched her. When it was done, Mala was truly grateful. She threw a party, bread smeared with margarine, a feast fit for a king. I was always hungry and thought only about food.
In the winter of 1943-1944, together with Edek, we began to think more seriously about escaping. We decided that it would be a good idea to escape dressed in SS uniforms. I began to establish contacts with SS men. Business contacts, of course, in order to use them to realize our plans. Negotiations dragged on, and Galiński became impatient. Finally, he said that he would get the uniforms from the commander of his work squad, SS Rottenführer Lubusz. I certainly remember SS Rottenführer Edward Lubusz from Bielsko. He had a habit of singing the Polish national anthem when he was drunk. During one of our conversations, Edek said that Mala Zimmertbaum would also escape with us. He argued that, as a Jew, she was doomed. I already knew then that they were close. I was upset and reminded him of our plans. He said that he would escape first with Mala and then send the uniform and a pass back to the camp so that I could escape. We set the escape for Saturday the 24th of June, 1944. Dressed in dark blue overalls, Marla carried a white porcelain sink on her head. Gilinski walked next to her, dressed in an SS uniform. They went down the road in the direction of Budi. I watched them pass the outside cordon of sentry posts. An SS man was in the watchtower. Edek showed his pass from a distance that he was taking the prisoner to install the sink.
I heard the siren. Someone was missing in the men's camp. Later, it turned out that someone was missing in our camp as well. As a messenger, Marla often went somewhere and didn't return in time for the beginning of the roll call. She had malaria, so Drexler was very worried whether she hadn't fallen down somewhere, was lying ill somewhere, and ordered a search for her. They had still not sounded the alarm that she'd escaped. The SS men simply didn't want to believe it. Nobody thought that such a well-known person would escape. Therefore, the roll call was extremely long. We waited and wondered, what next? Finally, the sirens wailed, and we were thrilled, because Marla's Slovakian messenger friends told us that Marla had escaped, and that she must have escaped with Edek.
Despite Edek's escape, the roll call in section B2D didn't last long, but we could see that the roll call in the women's camp dragged on. I assumed that Marla's absence had been confirmed. There was no search for the escapees.
It was wonderful. There was no other escape like it, that a boy escaped with a girl, and a Pole and Jewess no less. It was known that they were in love, very much in love.
Edek behaved in a very noble manner. He might not have been fair to me, informing me only at the last minute that there would be a third person, Marla, but he wanted to save her. He wanted to rescue her.
One day passed, another day. They didn't find them. So the Germans could be outwitted. It was possible to get out of here. We didn't know anything about it for some time, until one day the news came that Edek and Marla had been arrested. It was said they made a big mistake.
I was in a clothing warehouse on the fence side, and I heard a couple of people walking. When I looked, I saw two people in civilian clothes walking beside each other, but escorted some distance away by an SS man. It was them being brought from the gate to Barrack 11.
When we found out that they had been caught, that Marla was sitting in the bunker of the death barrack, the entire camp was in despair.
I was sent to a group cell in Barrack 11. Edek was there. He told me about his escape. They got near the border with Slovakia. Marla was frail and weak. It had exhausted her. She wanted to buy something, offering gold that she took from the camp as payment. This attracted the attention of someone who informed the Germans. They promised each other that they'd stay together, that if they die, they'd die together. He went to get her at the store. A man from the Gestapo was talking to her. He ordered Edek to take off his hat. His shaved head betrayed him, indicating he was a prisoner who escaped from a camp. I met Galinsky in a cell next to the isolation cell. We sat there for 10 days. He was withdrawn, quiet. Each evening he stood by the door and, with his face next to the crack, whistled a beautiful melody, and after some time, from the other end of Barrack 11, the same melody, whistled by Mahler, reached us through these corridors. In this way, they were still able to show their love even in the death cells. At one point, after the evening roll, the stoker, Jakub, arranged a half-hour meeting for Edek and Mahler. That same evening, Edek began to draw a woman's face on the wall in cell 18. Though he never actually said so, I assumed it was a portrait of Mahler.
They escaped June 24th, were caught on July the 6th, and the sentence was carried out on September the 15th.
During the day, Edek Galinsky was brought to the kitchen annex, where the capo Jup prepared victims for death by hanging. Before he tied his hand, Edek asked him if he would give him a piece of paper and pencil, because he wanted to write a final few words. Jup agreed to the request. This was bloody Jup, a thug who tortured prisoners, but in this case he acted like a gentleman. He gave him the piece of paper. Edek didn't write much. He enclosed an earlier prepared lock of hair, wrote his first and last name, as well as the first and last name and camp number of Mahler Zimmetbaum. Jup gave me the piece of paper that Galinsky gave him. Edek was led to the gallows. He was very brave. He went with his head held high. He said only, "Comrades, avenge me." He got up on the stool. The sentence began to be read out in German and Polish. Before it was finished, Galinsky put his head in the noose and jumped off the stool. The capo Jup ran to him immediately and freed him from the noose, putting the stool back under his legs. The sentence again began to be read out. The final words had not yet been spoken when Galinsky began to yell, "Jeszcze Pol," but with the word Polska still in his throat. Jup kicked the stool, and then there was silence. At this, the SS men ordered everyone to disperse. They were also leaving. But we stood there some time, and finally I said to those around me, "Caps off." It went through the crowd. Everyone heard it. Everyone standing there took off their caps.
A roll call was ordered even before the work squads returned. This was not a normal roll call, but one for all the female prisoners who worked in the camp, in the offices, packing department, supply department, and the clothing warehouse. Rötters, a short SS man with a swarthy face, stood next to Mahler. The commandant of the women's camp, Maria Mandel, stood on the other side. We stood and waited, wondering what will happen now. Mandel finally spoke and said that in accordance with the order from Berlin, Mahler will be burned alive in the crematorium for escaping from the camp. She said, "Anyone who, just like Mahler, is considering escaping from the camp will be dealt with." As Mandel spoke these words, Mahler, almost imperceptibly, took something out of the package in her hand. Then, completely calm, she began cutting the veins in her left arm. I watched in amazement as the yellow colour gradually left her face. It was the first time in my life that I saw someone cut their veins. I thought she was cutting her wrist, but she cut herself at the elbow. Seeing all this, none of the prisoners standing in front of the kitchen said a word, but something must have been on our faces, because Retters suddenly turned towards Mahler and saw what she was doing. His reaction was immediate. He grabbed her arm, making it impossible for her to continue. The labor chief, Arbeitsführer Retters, grabbed the razor blade from her and she hit him in the face. This is probably one of the most vivid memories I have about Auschwitz, that an SS man got it in the face. He grabbed her hand and broke it. The sound of the bone cracking was so loud that everybody heard it. The entire ceremony, the entire show was interrupted. Mahler bled a lot. They took her to the camp, a sick room to the dispensary. They wanted the bleeding to stop so the sentence could be carried out, so she didn't kill herself. A prisoner took her, all bloody, to the hospital. The doctors and nurses busied themselves with her, bandaged her arm, but saving her life was out of the question. In fact, they did everything to make sure she didn't survive. After some time, they brought her back in the same wheelbarrow. The camp commandant walked behind as they wheeled Mahler toward the black gate of the crematorium. There were 3 versions of what happened later at the crematorium. The first is that they brought Mahler to the crematorium, and one of the SS men there recognized her. He took pity on her and said that he would rather shoot her because he didn't want to throw her alive into the fire. The second version is that this same SS man gave Mahler poison, which she took. According to the third version, Mahler had a capsule of poison with her, which she took in the crematorium with the SS man's agreement. No one knows what really happened, because none of us were there.